Welcome back to On the Wild, episode number 52. I'm Anuj Basker. With me, as always, Riley Keenan. We've officially gone 52 consecutive weeks. Next week is the year anniversary of us starting our podcast. 52 consecutive weeks. That's pretty impressive. I'm pretty proud of ourselves. For accomplishing that. Thank you to everybody who's watched us up to this point, and who will continue to watch us going forward. But the NFL playoffs kicked off last week. Had some pretty bad games, I'm not gonna lie, except for a couple of them. We're just gonna go through those, spend a little bit of time on each game, recap them, and then preview this week's games, because this week's games are very interesting on both sides, or both conferences. So we want to start off with, I guess, should we just go in the schedule of when the games were played, or?
Yeah, we can go with like Raiders Bengals first, I guess.
Okay.
I guess like the one takeaway I had from this game is Burrow did not look like a guy who was playing in his first ever football game or a playoff start. He was incredibly efficient out there. He was getting pretty much everybody else involved. Obviously, he was going to Chase pretty early. Went to him like the first three passes of the game, and it almost seemed like it was just going to go to him. But everyone was getting involved. Uzomah had a really good game. The defense played really well. It came down to that stop at the line at the end, which was crazy. He was 1 or 2 yards away from getting into the end zone and potentially tying the game, or even possibly taking the lead if they went for the 2-point. But the Bengals looked really good in this one. It came down to the wire, and it was probably the most entertaining game, I'd say, of the wildcard round. Maybe the second.
I wouldn't say that. Yeah. I would say it was Niners Cowboys, but but this game was a pretty good game, other than the referee mishap with the blown whistle and it stopped the DBs. Like, I don't even know what side I'm on with that, because I feel like they shouldn't have blown the whistle at all. So I feel like the right football play ended up happening. I feel like that would have been a touchdown regardless. Mm-hmm. But like you said, Burrow came out hot. Joe Shiesty, that's my dog. He came out to play. Chase had a great game. Defense played well. Again, like I said last week, credit to the Raiders that they're even in this position, and they kept it that close. I mean, they're moving on to the next round with all the momentum in the world. Burrow in his last 3 games, including the regular season and the playoffs, he has 10 touchdowns, no interceptions, averages over 400 yards, over 70% completion. He's probably playing the best of any quarterback who's in the playoffs, maybe other than Rodgers, because he's going to win the MVP. But Burrow's coming into Tennessee hot.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then the second game we had was Patriots-Bills, and that, I don't want to say it didn't go as planned, but I didn't think that it was going to be close, but I didn't think it was going to be that bad. It was.
I think I said it was
a blowout.
I think I said it was going to be close when we predicted it. But yeah, the Bills played literally a perfect game. I don't think they had a possession that didn't end in a touchdown, other than their last one, which they just kneeled the ball down.
Yeah, they had 7. The first 7 possessions were for touchdowns, and I think the record before that was 5. So that just kind of alludes to how great their offense was in that game. Mm-hmm. Josh Allen was crazy rushing out of the pocket. He threw 5 touchdowns. I mean, the defense was incredible. That's what we knew it would come down to in this game, was the defense. We knew the Patriots could bring it, but at the end of the day, Buffalo was more, experienced, and they had the better quarterback on their side. It came down to, Mac Jones is a rookie. He doesn't have that many options. The run game's pretty good, and he's got a great coach. But when you're going up against someone like Josh Allen in that Buffalo defense, it's going to be hard to get completions and to move the chains downfield. So this game kind of went as expected. It was a little more of a blowout than I thought. But, I mean, the Bills are rolling.
Yeah. I think with the win streak the Patriots went on in the regular season, it kind of made a lot of us jump the gun on how good this team is. I know for me personally, I thought when they were on that win streak, they had a legit shot at making the Super Bowl. I think a lot of people kind of thought the same. I think at one point they were actually the favorites to make the Super Bowl. So, they've kind of jumped the gun on the rebuild, just like how the Bengals have with their team. But I think they're still a year or 2 away, especially with Mac Jones being a rookie. They still need some work with their skill positions and whatnot. But, they'll be back next year, and, we'll see what happens then. But they're still not on the level of the Bills. I think it's their division for sure. The foreseeable future.
the one play I like to point out about that game is the Dawson Knox touchdown that Josh Allen said he literally said he threw it away. He was trying to throw it away past the end zone, but what a catch from Knox.
Yeah.
He's slowly, getting into that. I think he's definitely a top 10 tight end in the league, but I think he might be getting into that top 5 position. It's going to be tough, obviously, because there's a lot of big guys in that running, but he's looking real good as that number 2 option on the Buffalo offense.
Yeah, I think the top 5, I mean, you got Kelsey, Kittle, Waller. I think that's solidified as the top 3.
Yeah.
And then the next 2 pick, I mean, you could say Pitts just based off potential, and he went over 1,000 this year. Mark Andrews.
Andrews definitely.
I think he was first team All Pro this year. He's definitely in there. So I would say that's the top 5. But Knox, Gesicki, Hawkinson. There's a lot of good tight ends in the NFL now. It's the strongest the position's been in quite a while, I think. So, and you still have Rob Gronkowski. There's a lot of great tight ends in the NFL.
Yeah. And speaking of Rob Gronkowski, I guess we move on to that Buccaneers-Eagles game, the first game of that Sunday afternoon. And wow, I mean, to me, it went as expected. I didn't think it was going to be close. Obviously, when they played earlier in the season, it was a close game that came down to the wire. But when it's the playoffs, it's a different game for Brady and the guys that surround him. Hurts didn't have a bad game, but he was okay. But it's tough against that Buccaneers defense. And when you don't have much around you and support, this was a good Eagles team that I wouldn't necessarily say they deserved a playoff spot, but they deserved to be in that running. And they had some easy wins. They had some tough losses. But at the end of the day, we knew how this game was going to go.
Yeah, I just don't think the Eagles are a good team. We said last week that maybe they would keep it close for a couple quarters. Yeah. But, Tampa Bay just took over from the jump. We didn't say it last week, but this is literally the worst possible matchup for the Eagles to have. I was about to say the 49ers. The Buccaneers is the worst matchup for them just because the Eagles are so one-dimensional. They're very good running team. I think they lead the league in rushing. Yeah. I don't know if they lead it overall, but I know since week 7 when they really took off, they've led the league in rushing. Yeah. And Tampa Bay's been the best run defense over the past couple of years. So this is just the worst matchup possible. Hurts, like you said, I don't think he played terrible. He missed some wide open. He missed Devontae Smith many times. He was wide open. But also credit to the Buccaneers defense. This is kind of the first time they've been healthy in a long time, and they look really good. So,
You said too, I think they were the best rushing offense in the league, and that was without a guy ever attaining 100 yards. A single guy getting 100 yards a game. It was always, a lot of guys around. They had 4 different guys rushing the ball this game. I think it was Scott, Howard, Sanders, and Hurts. But I think one thing I commend is that Buccaneers offense getting 9 different receivers involved was huge. That's what Tom Brady does when he's with the Patriots. It doesn't matter who that one guy is. He's going to get everybody involved, whoever's open. So if he can continue to do that going into the next round, I have a lot of faith in the Buccaneers. But it'll be tough with the schedule they got ahead of them.
Yeah, with no Godwin and AB, you have to spread the ball around. Obviously, Mike Evans and Gronkowski are going to dominate the targets overall, but you have to get everybody involved, especially with the check downs to Giovanni Bernard and Scotty Miller. That's what they're going to have to do to stay alive in the playoffs going forward, like you said. But
yeah, and then
also a huge loss for them though is Tristan Wirfs and Ryan Jensen. They got injured in the game. I feel like that's going to be a huge factor in whether or not they beat the Rams this weekend. Mm-hmm. I know Bruce Arians said that Wirfs is going to be a game time decision. I'm not sure about Jensen yet, but those are 2 huge losses. Also considering their offensive line's been very healthy this season. So kind of the worst possible timing with that.
And we'll probably get into that a little bit more when we talk about this upcoming week's picks. But going into probably the most entertaining game of the week, I agree with you there, is the 49ers against Dallas. And this was when we actually realized, wow, we might actually nail our wild card predictions, which we did. We went 6-0. So I'm pretty proud of that right now. I don't know how it's going to go from here on out. It's going to be tough.
I mean, a lot of the games are kind of obvious. I feel like this was the game where it kind of went either way, but the rest of them were you can kind of see it. For
sure. And I mean, in this one, there wasn't really a standout in terms of throwing the ball, but I mean, running the ball, you look at Deebo Samuel. He's an X factor. He's the biggest X factor, I think, in the playoffs and what he's capable of doing and what, he's given so much opportunity at such a young age to kind of take over the load a bit. And, at the end of that game, that was one of the greatest play calls I've seen. It's probably the best I've seen in the playoffs, going to Deebo there to get that huge run and close the game out. But Dallas really just didn't have an answer the entire game. Dak didn't really look that poised. They came back a bit in the second half, but they just did not look like a good football. They didn't look like a team that went 12-5 this year.
Yeah, they just didn't come out the same way that the 49ers came out. The 49ers came out firing, and the Cowboys just came out kind of lackadaisical. Like, they weren't really hitting on anything. Like, they just came out kind of lazy almost. Yeah. Which I want to touch on because that stems straight from the coach. Like, that's absolutely their job to get their team ready to play. And when you come out that flat and you have 14 penalties,
exactly.
You're the most penalized team over the whole season. I don't know if they gave up the most yards. I'm pretty sure they're like a yard or two short of the Raiders.
Yeah.
You're not going to win big games like that. You're going to beat up on the NFC East. You went 6-0 in your division, but including the playoffs, you were 6-6 against every other team. Like, they're an above average team with a great talent. Like, if you look at their roster top to down, they're as good as anybody in the NFL. Mm-hmm. But their coaching staff, their ownership is just kind of holding them back. They're kind of in their own way. And I don't see anything changing unless they make major change. Sorry, and I'm talking about Mike McCarthy specifically.
Yeah.
If it's not clear.
Yeah, they're very undisciplined, and I was gonna mention that about the penalties. That's been the reason they've lost a lot of games this year. I can't remember who they were playing exactly, but Brown in the secondary gets 3 penalties in the third and fourth quarter.
That just cannot,
or against the Raiders. Yeah, that just cannot happen. If you're a team that's looking to compete, and every year, you're coming in like, wow, we got so much talent, we can really pull it off this year. The Dallas Cowboys really are the Toronto Maple Leafs of the NFL, and I think they proved that this year. So there's a lot of learning to do. I think coaching needs to come into question of whether or not they, move on from McCarthy and go to someone else. But right now, this team has so much talent. It really just comes down to what you're going to bring to practice, and then what you're going to replicate on the field. And they just weren't able to do that. The 49ers, like you said, they came out firing. They had that experience of the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and a lot of young guys, all they want to do is win. And so many guys have been out with injuries over the last couple of years. They were riddled with them last year. So this was really that point in time this year where they're like, you know what, we got our guys back and we're ready to make a run. And I'd be scared of the 49ers if I was the Packers, but the Packers are pretty unbelievable. So it'll be a tough game.
And to be honest, this game should have been a blowout. Like, if Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't miss Brandon Ayuk on the sideline when they were up 16, I think, on 3rd and 11, who knows what they do if he doesn't throw the interception. Like, Jimmy Garoppolo kind of let the Cowboys back in the game, and Shanahan didn't help. Like, if you really think about it, that was a terrible ending to the game for the 49ers. They should have put them away a lot earlier. And, it goes back to the Super Bowl. When they were in the Super Bowl, they couldn't finish. Shanahan, when he was in Atlanta, couldn't finish the Super Bowl. Like, that's kind of been a reoccurring theme with Shanahan. Like, it's kind of tough for him to finish games, comfortably. But, like you said, I think the 49ers have the makings of giving the Packers a great challenge in the divisional round.
Yeah. And then we moved on to the one game I think we all kind of knew this was going to happen. The Chiefs absolutely steamrolled the Steelers. It was great as a Browns fan to see it happen, but it was tough to see Ben go out that way. I mean, listen, he didn't have a bad game. Threw 2 touchdowns, 215 yards. He wasn't very efficient, but he wasn't bad by any means. Last year in the wild card round, he was pretty awful, and this year he went out on good terms. I'll say that, but I mean, they couldn't get the run game going at all. A lot of drop passes from some of their receivers, and Mahomes threw 5 touchdowns. Like what are you going to do?
He threw 5 touchdowns in 10 minutes and 30 seconds of game time.
Yeah, it's absurd.
It's amazing. Like, I looked at his stat line at the end of the game. I was like, what? He threw for 400 yards?
Yeah.
It didn't feel like he did. But
it didn't at all.
I mean,
30 for 39, too, incredibly efficient. Like, the Steelers just had no answer. And they got a phenomenal defense, but there was nothing they can do. When the
players are just
like that.
Players were wide open every play. Like, I don't get it. But, I mean, Chiefs are the Chiefs.
Yeah. And they got really 6 guys, and they got 6 different guys involved in the rush game. Kelsey was playing out of his mind. He even throws the touchdown later in the game. Like, they're fine.
And Jerick McKinnon just came out of nowhere, and he got 100 scrimmage yards. Like, he looked good.
Yeah, I was not expecting that at all. But I mean, he might need to be their number 1 guy. Obviously, Clyde's out, but there could be a little bit of a battle come next season.
I mean, going forward, go with the committee. should work with what else you have around them. I mean, you don't really need much.
It works for teams like Philadelphia, Cleveland, Baltimore a season ago. So there's no reason the Chiefs can't work that into their offense.
Mm-hmm.
But and then moving on to that final wild card game Monday night, Rams Cardinals. I'm going to be honest, this is exactly how I saw this game going. From the beginning of the season, I said I didn't have too much faith in the Cardinals. I knew that division, I knew all four of those teams had a chance to make the playoffs. Seahawks obviously lose Wilson during the season, and their defense is pretty awful. So they were out of the chase early. But I knew, they started off great, but you knew in that division, the 49ers and the Rams, at least in my opinion, just have more to bring to the table than the Cardinals do. And, with D-Hop out, that hurts them so much with the options that Kyler has. And, he had a really bad start to the game. He figured it out a bit later on, but still at the end of the day, he really couldn't get anything going. And the run game was kind of stagnant. I'm surprised how little they went to James Conner. And I think he had 4.8 yards per carry, and Edmonds just really couldn't get anything going. So the play calling from Kingsbury was pretty questionable, but look at the Rams, man. They're pretty flawless out there.
Yeah, I was surprised on how well the Rams defense played. They look like the 2020 Rams.
Yeah.
I wanted this to be a good game because obviously we picked the Rams. We've been kind of on the Rams all season, even before the last offseason even started when they made the Stafford trade. We've been on the Rams, but I think injuries kind of robbed the Cardinals of what they could have been and the potential they could have reached. But I also saw a stat this morning. Cliff Kingsbury as a head coach in college and in the NFL, in his first 7 games of the season, he's a combined 42, 20, and 1. The rest of the year, he's a combined 16 and 43. Wow. I don't know what to make of that other than the fact that he doesn't either adjust or teams catch up with him. I don't know what it is, but he just struggles in the second half of the year.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I think it really has to come down to adaptability. Earlier on in the season, they're firing on all cylinders, and then teams are figuring out parts of their offense and picking apart their defense a little bit, and then they're installing things into their game plan that are going to fix it. And Arizona has no answer for it, it seems like, or the teams he's played with in the past. They come out hot, and if they're not able to finish it at the end of the season, that really does show coaching because, it's not like the guys on the team are just stopping playing football. They're not losing their talent. It's just it really comes down to game planning and what you do in that game.
I also liked is that Stafford, even though he didn't have to do much, I think he only threw 17 passes. So he didn't turn the ball over. He didn't put the ball in harm's way. He took advantage of turnovers that the Rams got. Obviously, they got the pick 6 as well on the 1-yard line. But, he didn't make any mistakes. And as long as he can do that, the Rams are going to be a really tough team to beat.
Yeah. And another thing I was looking at the Rams is obviously they went to Cam Akers in the second half. He's one of his first games back, and they're trying to get him involved early because he did have a really good rookie season. But my only problem obviously they're up big, so I guess they can try things. But if Sony Michel is coming out that hot in the first quarter, you got to keep feeding him the ball, especially in next week when you're taking on a team like the Buccaneers that has as good of a run defense as they do. If a guy's hot, you got to keep feeding him the ball. You can't be deferring to someone else to give them more opportunity. Obviously, I think they'll be splitting carries a bit in the second game, but it should be interesting. Also, shout out to Budda Baker. Hopefully he is A-okay. I think he tweeted out saying that, thank you for all the love that he's getting. But that play was so scary. My heart stopped when that happened. Initially, I thought Cam Akers was the one that got hurt because he kind of went down awkwardly. But then when you see the replay, it's like, oh my goodness, the breath, you lose it.
Yeah, we've talked about this before where those types of injuries where they just kind of collapse with no sort of they lose all motion in their body. They just drop to the floor. That's the scariest injury in sports to me.
Yeah.
When they just lose all, I don't even know, but hopefully he's okay. I know he put out a video that's saying that he'll make a full recovery, which is, great to know, but
that's huge.
That was very scary.
Yeah.
But moving on to the divisional games, I actually don't know what the schedule is. I'm assuming Tennessee and Cincinnati play first.
Yeah, that's the first game. And the Titans are getting Henry back after a fractured foot. The guy, he hasn't played since October, and he's 9th in the league in rushing. Just
pretty sure he was top 5 until maybe a couple weeks before the season even ended.
It's insane how good this guy is, and it's going to be really interesting. Obviously, with the fractured foot, it's going to be tough to tell, and then to know how much his production is going to be, if he's really going to be at 100%. We don't know that. But what we do know is that the Bengals have a top 5 rush defense, and they are going to be ready, willing, and able to stop Henry. So it's going to be very tough. But on the other side of the ball, the Titans have, I think, the 8th worst pass defense in the league, and we know that the Cincinnati is able to get the ball in the air. So if Tennessee can't get the run game going and Cincinnati's firing, I can see this game being a big-time shootout. And if it comes down to that, and Burrow and Tannehill, I'm going Burrow. So I definitely think the Bengals take this one.
Yeah, I'm going Bengals too. Obviously, I think this is going to be the first time in a long time the Titans are going to be healthy. Henry's coming back. Julio Jones is there. I don't know how healthy he is because he's kind of been nicked all year. It's the same hamstring that kind of bothered him last year in Atlanta, I'm pretty sure. A.J. Brown's there. He's come on in the second half of the season. Tannehill, never really been a huge fan, but you can't deny what he's done this season. It's been very impressive. And the Titans as a whole, with the injuries that they've had, Vrabel is a great coach, and they have a great team overall. Their defense, which came in with very low expectations, has played really well, actually. Harold Landry's been great. Bud Dupree's been good. Like, Jeffrey Simmons is a monster inside. But I'm riding the Cincinnati wave. I got Joe Burrow. Joe Shiesty.
Yeah.
Can't
Joe
stop. He's so cool. Everything
he's so
he does.
fun to watch. As soon as he won that national championship with LSU, he's hitting that cigar, sitting on the couch. You just knew that the guy's he's a baller.
Yeah.
He is exactly what I thought the Browns were getting in Baker. Exactly what I thought.
I've seen that before. Joe Burrow is exactly what Cleveland thought they were getting with Baker Mayfield.
Yeah. A cocky guy who can get the ball downfield.
Cocky out of the chip on his shoulder, a walk-on.
Yeah. It's frustrating, I'll tell you. But hey, this game's I think it's gonna be a really good game because the Titans they show up in big games. They have struggled in games that don't matter as much. But the one thing I didn't really take into account too, I think Ogunjobi and Hendrickson are both going to be out for the Bengals, so that's going to open up a couple lanes for Henry to run through. I know Ogunjobi's out. Hendrickson, I think, is up in the air right now.
That changes everything because that's the 2 best defensive linemen, I think.
Exactly, Henderson, that changes a lot.
Yeah,
and one of the things a lot of people are talking about going into this game is that the Bengals are 0-7 on the road in the playoffs. If there's anything we've learned this year, is that this is a very different Bengals team from the history of the league.
They also haven't won a playoff game since 1991.
Exactly.
But before last week, so you can't.
Yeah, you kind of throw all the prior stats out the window.
I hate history stats like that.
I don't.
They have nothing to do with the present.
Yeah, it's a completely different team, completely different coaching staff, completely different league. So unless it's within the last 5 years or 10 years, and you have the same,
the last time the Bengals made the playoffs, it was Andy Dalton and AJ Green.
Yeah.
Now it's a completely different team, new coaching staff, new everything. You can't compare.
You can't hold it to them. But yeah,
go Bengals.
I think we're both rolling with the Bengals here, sticking with our picks. And then moving on to the next game, I believe it is.
And it's Niners Packers. It has to be because I think Chiefs. Yeah, because I think. Yeah, Rams Tampa has to be Sunday because the Rams played on Monday.
That's true. So it's Packers for Niners? Yeah, they're the primetime game. Yeah. This one's interesting because since like their 2010 win in the Super Bowl, the Packers have made 3 NFC conference championships, lost all of them. They've had 8 playoff appearances, and each of the times they played the 49ers, they played them 3 times. And we just talked about, we talked about history and how we don't really like it. But they have lost to the 49ers every single time he's played them, at least Rodgers. So whether it's because of lack of talent, a lack of defense, or whatever it may be, they've just lost those games and they haven't been ready for them. This is the one time I really look at it as I can't see a way that Rodgers loses this. And obviously, I really like the 49ers, and I think this will be a tight and close-knit game, but it's too important for the legacy of him. And the Packers are just so good on both sides of the ball that I have to roll with them.
Yeah, I said it last week. The 49ers are the absolute worst matchup for the Packers of any team in the playoffs, I think. Just the way that they run the ball. The Packers struggle against the run. That's probably their one weakness that they have. They're getting Zadarius Smith back. Jair Alexander's, I think, playing as well. So they're getting healthier. I wouldn't be surprised if the Niners took this. I don't know what the spread is. I'm sure it's not too much. I think it's
not too much.
Maybe 5.5 or something. But I expect it to be a very close game.
Yeah.
Game that'll go either way. Similar to their game back in, I think, week 5, maybe less dramatic, maybe not 37 seconds left to get a field goal.
Yeah.
But, it's okay. The Packers are favored -6. They're favored by 6. I would expect maybe around that, actually. Maybe like a 27-20, 27-21 sort of game, 30-24, something like that.
I was just going to allude to that last game because it was like 30-28 in week 5. I think it came down to Mason Crosby hitting a field goal, but the one, they just barely secured the win, and that was over a 49ers team that, Jimmy G really hadn't figured out the kinks yet. Deebo Samuel hadn't even really been used as a running back at that point. Kittle, I believe, was hurt, and Ayuk was not having anywhere near a productive season as he had prior. So this 49ers team has melded into something a lot more special than it was at that time. And to be able to keep it that close against a very competitive Packers team, it shows how good the 49ers really are. But this one's going to be really tough. And I almost kind of want to take weather into account. And I usually don't care. But because they're in California and they're the 49ers, I think this game is 10 degrees under any game in San Francisco that they've ever had. So it's going to be very cold for those Niners. They're going to have to come ready and bundled up. But at the end of the day, I think this game will be very close. And I think it'll steal the show, honestly.
Yeah, I think, this isn't the game that I'm looking forward to the Rams Bucks. That's my game of the week, but that's
the thing that's crazy. This is, like, to me at least, this has been the most entertaining AFC divisional round we could have. Like, Chiefs Bills is an incredible matchup. Bucks Rams, crazy. Niners Packers, because it is a rivalry, and a team that's very young and up and coming and ready to dominate, and another team that's had a lot of history, but at the same time is also very young. So, like, even Titans Bengals, like, that's going to be a great game. It's just one of the more ones you kind of forget about a little bit, even though it's going to be awesome to watch.
Yeah. But I got Packers also in a close one.
Yeah. I'm taking Packers as well. Rodgers is looking for that redemption after not getting drafted by them in 2005. So
yeah,
should be interesting. And then Bucks Rams, I believe, is the
Bucks. Game? Yeah, no, Bucks Rams is the day game. Yeah. 3:00.
I mean, I look at this like the Rams almost kind of like built their team to withstand the Bucks, and obviously it's going to come down to that pass rush of Aaron Donald and Von Miller, and any other day I'd say, you know what, I think the Bucks can actually combat that. But like you said earlier, Jensen, we don't know if he's going to play. Tristan Wirfs, we also have no clue if he's going to play. Without those two guys, that's going to open up a lot of aggressiveness from the Rams defensive line, and you got a guy like Tristan Wirfs who, prior to that injury, had played every single snap of his NFL career at that point. So you are losing such a pivotal guy to your offensive line. And without Fournette and Rojo already, Bernard already has to take a huge load of the offense. It's going to be very tough, but I'm sticking with the Rams. I think the Rams take it.
Yeah, I think the Rams match up really well with the Bucks. They've played twice since Brady's been in Tampa Bay. They played last season when Goff was the quarterback. They played earlier on in the season. It was a 3-point game. I think it was 27-24. And they played again this season, week 3. The Rams obviously dominated that game 34-24. The Bucks couldn't run the ball in either game. It really came down to Brady in both games. And I think if they can shut down the run again and they can get after Brady, especially with injuries on the offensive line, because even if Wirfs does play and Jensen, like, they're not going to be 100%.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure if Wirfs doesn't play, I'm pretty sure his backup's hurt too. So they're going to have some trouble on the right side. And especially with the lack of weapons, like, Brady's obviously going to spread the ball around. Like, I have no doubts about what Brady can do, but I think the ability that the Rams have to just stick Ramsey on Mike Evans and hopefully, and maybe take him out of the game, or at least limit him as much as possible, and make Brady go to everybody else. I think that favors the Rams. And as long as Stafford doesn't throw 2 picks or turn the ball over excessively, and the other Rams receivers can beat single coverage, because I think they're going to try to take Cooper Kupp away the same way the Cardinals try to. If Odell can show up, Van Jefferson, Higbee, they can run the ball. I don't even think they need to run the ball like well. I just think they need to stick to it like they did against the Cardinals. I think the Rams have a really good chance of winning this game, even though it is in Tampa Bay. But I'm gonna go Rams. like I said last week, it has a lot to do with the fact that we've both been on the Rams pretty much all season. But I think the Rams have a great shot at winning this game.
Yeah, I really like two of the points you made. You talked about Ramsey on Evans, and that matchup is going to be massive in this game because I think the last time they matched up, Evans had 8 receptions, over 100 yards, I think, and that was with Godwin in the lineup. So now that he's out of the lineup, that matchup is huge because Evans is going to be gone. He's going to be going to a lot from Brady, so Ramsey's going to have to hold it down. But at the same time, guys like Gronk, they're going to have a big game, if they want to beat this Rams defense. And at the same time, like you said, Stafford has to be a game manager. He can't be turning the ball over. I think he threw for over 300 yards. He had like 4 touchdowns last time.
He had an amazing game the first game.
He played really well, and that was before they even had Odell. So that red zone presence that they have now with Odell and obviously Cooper Kupp has been incredible all year. They're going to be tough to stop. That BUCS defense is going to have to play like they did in the playoffs last year if they want to really compete. This game, I know you talk about defense and offense so much. I think it really will come down to the offense and, not turning the ball over. So both quarterbacks are going to have to be on their A game for this one. I'm going Rams as well.
Yeah, and the first time they played, the BUCS defense was also kind of banged up. Carlton Davis was in that game. Pretty sure a bunch of corners got hurt in that game. So the BUCS are a lot healthier now than they were back then. But on the offensive side of the ball, they've obviously lost some players, and Antonio Brown's not there. So I think the Rams have an advantage in that standpoint, especially with the way the Rams defense is playing and the way they played against the Cardinals and what they're coming off of. So they're coming in hot. And they have all the confidence. Aaron Donald, he's the best defensive player in football. We know that. Despite how good of a season TJ Watt had this year, I think it's still Donald.
Yeah.
But he said, we respect everything that Brady's done, but this is a new year. They're coming in confident. We know Ramsey's confident. He always is. I think that Rams team just has confidence, and it stems from McVay. He can come across as cocky, but I think it's just more confidence in his team. And this is probably the most confident he's ever been in any of his teams. So I don't know. The Rams have a special feeling about them. I don't know why, but I think they got it.
I feel it.
Hopefully.
Yeah, me as well. And then we move on to the primetime game of Sunday, the Chiefs versus Bills, a rematch of last year's AFC Championship game. The Bills did get their redemption for that in week 5 of this year. I think they won 38-20. It was a slaughter. But the Chiefs had no answer.
Good point. I don't like when people do that. Redemption in the regular season. I don't like that. It does nothing.
It's the marquee, the narrative, I guess. But
it's like when Atlanta played New England in the Super Bowl and they played in the regular season. People are like, oh, they want redemption for the Super Bowl. Yeah. They still blew a 28-3 lead.
Yeah.
Even if they win, it's like, all right, well, you didn't win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they could win 50-0. It wouldn't matter. They still lost the Super Bowl. So it is a dumb point. And I think it is a dumb point here too, because the Bills won 38-20. The Chiefs had no answer. Josh
Here
Allen
it works.
Incredible.
Here it works because they're trying to redeem a playoff loss with another playoff win. With a playoff win,
it works. But the only thing I look at it as is it's at that point in time. Even we talked about it. It looked at the Bills were the best team in the AFC, and the Chiefs were not even looking at like a contender. We obviously believed, the Chiefs are going to figure it out. But it was tough at that point in time. And since that game, the Chiefs have gone 11-2. That was the game changer for the Chiefs this season. Mahomes, you could tell, was pissed, and he figured it out throughout the season. Kelsey was another guy who had struggled earlier on, and now he's coming ready to play. Hill was good all season. Let's be real. But, they got their redemption. But I think now the Chiefs have figured out that, they're on par with this team. And like we've said in the past, it's really going to come down to defense in this game. And I think the Bills do have the better defense. However, I think even with Mahomes getting a lot of interceptions this year, I think he's better with limiting his turnovers. And I think that'll come and play a lot into this game. Whereas Josh Allen, I think, he's getting out of the pocket more. Those Chiefs guys are going to be ready to hit him, and he needs to hold on to the ball.
Yeah. I said last week that if this did happen, that I think it would be a lower scoring game than it was last year. No, it's not going to be. This is going to be a high scoring game. It's going to be in the 30s, I think. In terms of who I think is going to win, I think the Chiefs are going to win because I think it's hard to replicate what the Bills did last week. If the Bills play like they did last week this game, then of course they're probably going to win. But it's hard to replicate that, especially when you're playing an offense like the Chiefs. There's a huge difference between Mac Jones and Patrick Mahomes and Hunter Henry and Kendrick Bourne and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. It's a huge jump. This week, obviously being in the second round of the playoffs. But I think I don't want to say I think the Chiefs will win. It'll be a closer game, and I think Patrick Mahomes will outplay Josh Allen, which will be the deciding factor.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think this is tough because I really want to stick with the predictions that I had initially going into the playoffs, and I think I will do that throughout. But going into this game, I have a lot of belief in that Bills team because they looked so good. But at the same time, the Chiefs look great as well. Both teams they both played opponents that had good defense, and the defense didn't matter because they were so good offensively. The difference is the Bills didn't really give up much to the pass, whereas the Steelers were able to still put up 21 on the Chiefs. But I think that was also a thing of just like, we're up so much, we're not even going to try as hard.
Yeah, final touchdown drive for the Steelers. Yeah. It was kind of throw drive.
Exactly. So, going into this, I almost want to say the Bills, but I'm going to stick with my gut here and go with the Chiefs. But it could really go either way. This is that one game where I think the winner of this game will come out of the AFC, even though the Titans and the Bengals are really good. But this matchup is everything. And I feel like this will be one of those games we talk about in the future because it'll be an absolute shootout.
Yeah, a lot of people are dubbing this like the actual NFC Championship game, which I think is kind of unfair to Cincinnati and Tennessee, but
100%.
No, these teams are that good.
Yeah, really.
So those are our picks. We again agree on every game, like we did last week, pretty much. Next week's gonna be interesting, depending on who makes the AFC and NFC Championship. But we wanted to talk about our own teams, the Browns and Falcons, who ended up with did they have the same record? What were the Browns' record? 7-10.
Browns were 8-9.
Okay, the Falcons 7-10. But we want to talk a little bit about our own teams, basically like what we need, what we think they want, what we think they need to do going forward in the offseason to improve their roster going forward. We didn't get to do it last week because we were so focused in on the playoffs. But do you want to start or should I start?
You can go ahead, I guess. I feel like you guys have a lot more room to grow.
To do.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Falcons ended up 7-10. A step up from last season in their first year with Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot at GM. In the offseason, I feel like first and foremost they need to do the Calvin Ridley trade because I feel like it's almost inevitable at this point. He obviously went on his mental health sabbatical earlier on in the season, I think around week 7 after the Miami game. And there's so many reports coming out that he wants out. Or he wants a fresh start, and the Falcons have kind of been silent on it. They had a press conference, and the GM said, like, we want him back, but it's kind of iffy at this point. What you'll get for him, I think you'll get a second-round pick for him. A lot of people are saying maybe the Eagles will give up a first-round pick for him. If you can get a first-round pick for him, that's, amazing. I'd rather have a first-round pick than have Calvin Ridley next year, considering this is his last year on his deal, because the Falcons just need players. Like they just need better depth overall. But if you get that out of the way, restructure some contracts, I think free agency, I think they should focus in on the offensive line, get some proven guys rather than drafting players. They don't have a great history with drafting offensive linemen. Lindstrom's turned out pretty good, and Matthews goes back to 2014, which was Mike Smith. It wasn't even Dan Quinn, it was Mike Smith. But yeah, focusing on offensive linemen in free agency, really on the whole offense, get some veteran receivers who can beat single coverage, and just take some pressure off of Kyle Pitts because he was kind of left on his own for a majority of the season, being the number one target, being double teamed as a rookie. I think if you bring in, this is wishful thinking, but somebody like Allen Robinson, I think that's a perfect fit. Somebody who can beat single coverage. I think that would be my number one target if I was Atlanta in free agency, depending on how much money he wants and how much money Atlanta can free up, maybe with like a Deion Jones trade or whatever it may be, restructuring contracts, Matt Ryan's contract maybe. Speaking of Matt Ryan, I don't think this is the year to draft a quarterback. I think next year is the year. With Bryce Young, CJ Stroud's coming out next year. I like both of those guys a lot more than I like any of the quarterbacks in this draft, whether it's Pickett, Corral, Malik Willis. I know earlier on in the season I was on the Malik Willis hype train, but I don't think he's really worth taking in the first round. If he's there in the second round, maybe you can take a flyer on him, let him develop. But I think this is the offseason for Atlanta to improve their roster overall, improve the trenches, and get your quarterback next year and build around him when you can get off Matt Ryan, hopefully next year or the year after, depending on how you want to, structure your growth for your quarterback, whether you want to have him sit for a year or, have him start right away. But I think the Falcons are in a pretty good spot, 8th overall. You can get there's going to be a lot of great players there. I think you take the best defensive player available, whether that's Kyle Hamilton, Stingley, one of the pass rushers, Jordan Davis, whoever it is, just get your defensive cornerstone and, build from there. But they have a lot of work to do, but I'm optimistic for next season. Because I don't – a lot of NFC teams, I see them getting a lot worse, whether it's Minnesota, Chicago is still rebuilding. I feel like a lot of teams are going to take a step back. Like, you're still going to have the top guys, Tampa Bay, Green Bay if Rodgers stays, the Rams, Cardinals, Niners. I think those teams are there. But I think after that, it's going to be kind of wide open for a lot of teams. I think Atlanta, with having a solid quarterback in Matt Ryan, because he is still a good quarterback, if you build a good enough roster this offseason, you can maybe make a run for a playoff spot, but we'll see. They have a really tough schedule next year, so I wouldn't be surprised if they even took a step back. But we'll see.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. You talk about how the Falcons need to improve upon their roster. The Browns, I feel like it's. I don't think the roster is the problem. I think it's understanding what they have and going out and winning games. I think the coaching room definitely needs to have a sit down and kind of look at everything that they have and understand what do we value in that player and how can we make them better. Obviously, it starts with your quarterback, Baker Mayfield. We don't know if he's going to be the guy next year. I think he will be, and I think, honestly, he should be, unless you can make a trade and get someone like Wilson or Rodgers. Otherwise, I don't think someone like Matt Ryan or Derek Carr is enough or worth it. Yeah, I mean, Derek Carr I'd take. But at the end of the day, I think it came down a lot to injuries with Baker this year. I think he can be much better, but he's not going to be the guy. He could be their franchise quarterback, but he's not going to take them to the playoffs. They'll win, not in spite of him, but they'll win games. We know this. What I look at with what this team can do, I think Kareem Hunt is one of the things. I think they should move Kareem Hunt in the offseason. He's got another year on his contract, but we know Dearness Johnson can be more than a good enough backup running back. He had a couple games this season where he rushed for over 100 yards when he was the starter, and we know Chubb can ball with the best of them. I think he's up there with the Taylors and the Henrys of the league. If he could get more rushing attempts, I think he could really prove himself. He's second all time right now in yards per carry behind Jamal Charles, so we know what he has. The receiver room is where I look and go, changes need to happen. I think the Browns should go out and get a receiver with their first round pick this year, because obviously Jarvis Landry is there, Rashard Higgins, Donovan Peoples-Jones, all of which
may be gone.
I think Landry will be gone too. That's the thing.
Cut him.
Yeah, I and honestly, I wouldn't hate that, because Landry was the amount of times I was so frustrated this year. Landry and Hooper could not catch the ball. It seemed like some games. It was that game with Browns Steelers where they needed to win to go to the playoffs. I get Baker started off 1 for 11, but there were 6 dropped passes in that 1 for 11. So there's only so much you could do when you're throwing the ball to guys that can't catch it. So I think go out and draft a receiver first round. You had that 3-headed monster at tight end with Hooper and Njoku and Bryant. I think you need to utilize Bryant and Njoku a significant amount more, because Bryant is dangerous in the red zone, and Njoku had multiple games this year where he showed he can be the number 1 guy, whereas Hooper was pretty stagnant all year. He'd get like 4 receptions, 30 yards a game. He never really was that, great. And obviously that comes with not having a great pass game. But, I mean, there's room to improve. On the defensive side of the ball, I think the Browns were pretty good this year. They won a lot of games because of their defense. But at the same time, games against the Chiefs, against the Chargers, they lost because they could not make a stop. So I think improving that secondary is very helpful. Getting another middle linebacker, I think, is the biggest thing for that linebacker core. But the D-line's good. Everyone just needs to stay healthy. Aside from that, I think the Browns can be a playoff team as long as you're healthy.
Well, of course.
I mean, yeah. And when you look at this team this year, I think the biggest mistake was letting Baker play. He should have got surgery as soon as he got hurt. We talked about it before. I think if Case Keenum was a starter all year, I genuinely think the Browns probably would have went at least 10-7, because they would have had a simplified game plan. They wouldn't have been risking it too much. And, there wouldn't be any uncertainty. It would just be, let's play our game. So moving into next year, I think it's just retooling, not rebuilding, obviously, because this team can compete right now. But, yeah, there's going to be a lot of question marks for, I think, both of our teams this offseason.
Yeah. Should be interesting for sure. But I think that's a good place to wrap up. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Comment down below, and we will see you guys next week. Take it easy.
Stay well.
Peace.